My name's John Hamilton. I'm Director of Service Operations at Holland Pump. Today we're going to take a little time to talk about basic maintenance and troubleshooting on our hydraulic pump. This is what we would refer to as our D6 hydraulic pump. It can run 4 and 6 inch hydraulic submersible pump heads. So we'll just start off with the basic service on these. As far as like oil changes and everything, I would recommend you refer to the manufacturer's manual on the service intervals. So most of them nowadays are around 500 hours. Here at Holland Pump we try to keep it under 360 hours. You want to use a quality 15W40 motor oil. So right now I'm just going to go over a few things. So as far as like the fuel system on these, it's very important today to keep your fuel filters changed. We change them every 2 weeks. We change them when we deliver the pump and set them up. So as far as like in our tanks on this particular model, the fuel capacity is 68 gallons. So our pickup tube that we have is usually about 1 inch off the bottom. So if you run low on fuel, you won't pick up debris and stuff. We also have drain ports to where you should service, you know, every month. Just we call them water traps. So you just kind of loosen up the bolt and let any water or debris out. But the other thing, as far as the fuel system on this particular model, and every pump will vary with engines, but on this one you have your pickup tube which goes to a water separator. In this water separator, you can't see it, but there is a screen in there. Basically you just want to clean this out, and you would want to clean that screen out. So all our pumps should go from the tank through a water separator, through the lift pump, and into the fuel system. Now a lot of engines will also have screens in the lift pump. So this one does have a screen. You'd want to keep that clean too. You can just pull them out, hit them with a little brake cleaner, let them dry off, and reinstall them. So, but very important to keep your fuel system clean. It really helps the longevity of your engine. So next, as far as like the oil on these, all our pumps come with a quick disconnect. You can get any little oil pump from Granger's or wherever mounted on a bucket, and a little 12 volt. You can hook them right up to the battery and drain your oil through that. I do recommend when you're draining anything and creating vacuum inside a engine to, you know, either pull the dipstick out or take the oil filter cap off so you don't create a vacuum in there and damage seals. But like I said, I'd refer to the engine manufacturer. You should get a book when you purchase a pump from us that has all the maintenance on the engine and everything. So like I said, most new engines are around 500 hour, but we try to keep them under 360, and we get a long life, average life out of all our engines here because of that. And as far as like the air cleaner, our policy here is it's not to exceed 1,000 hours or change as needed. So even if it looks perfect at 1,000 hours, we'll still change it. If it needs to be changed earlier because it's on a dusty job site, you'd want to do that. Again, that's pretty much goes with your fuel system for the air fuel mixture, and so you definitely need to keep that clean also. A little bit of maintenance goes a long ways. So if you let your oil go too long, you start getting excessive wear on the engine parts, and you're taking hours off that engine. Hydraulic pump, most hydraulic oils are around 5,000 hour oils. We use in our smaller units, or as requested, we'll build with. It's a canola oil. It's a non-food grade canola oil. So I would recommend that you change it out, you know, every 2,500 hours. If it goes too long, it'll start getting acidic. And what I mean by that is, like, when you look in here, you'll see that it's pretty clear. It may have a slight yellow tint, but when it starts getting acidic, it'll start looking like tea. So it'll start getting dark, and then you really let it go too long. We like to change our hydraulic filters. And again, I would use a good quality filter, like a Baldwin or a Napa, something that's used quite a bit in the construction industry. And we change them every 1,000 hours, and they're easy to change. You basically have to drain your tank down below your filter, and you can just spin it off and spin it back on. We also mark our filters with an oil-based pen with the hours when we change any filter, air cleaner, so we can keep track of the hours and keep track of how many hours is on the component itself. So, okay, I want to talk about a few things that you may notice, and I guess things you need to notice about when a unit's running. So, like I said, these are hydraulic submersible pumps. This is the power unit. You would run hose, usually 50-foot lengths, to a hydraulic pump head that is floating down in the water. You can run up to 300 feet of hydraulic hose, and that's per line, high pressure and return. But one thing I want to talk to you about is just a few tips. So if your pump's running, you notice a little needle jumping, and you notice vibration in your hoses. I mean, they'll almost vibrate themselves in the ground, and sometimes you'll even hear a ticking noise. You got hydraulic problems. So the first thing I would do is disconnect your hoses, deadhead the power unit like I showed you earlier. If it goes up nice and smooth and everything, you can probably eliminate that. That's the problem. A lot of the times it's the springs in the pump head that go. That's kind of a wear item. I would check them every time that you are able to pull the pump head, or if you're moving it every couple thousand hours, check the springs. If you did that, you would probably almost alleviate a lot of your hydraulic problems. But if you do notice that, eliminate your power unit or test it, but you would still have to pull the entire system and purge. You'd have to clean this completely out with the filters, the magnetic filters. But you would probably, when you're checking your hydraulic motor, each vane could have anywhere from 3 to 5 springs on it, depending on the size. And you get one spring that breaks, and so what happens is that spring, it's getting high pressure pumped through it, and it's not able to hold that vane out against the edge of the cam ring, and it starts popping. And that's what creates that vibration in your hose. So that's something definitely to look out for, but always pull the entire system. All right, now we're going to take a look at one of our bigger units. This is a D12 hydraulic. It powers 12-inch hydraulic submersible pump heads. This engine is a Tier 3 engine. So in the construction field, probably starting about in the early 2000s, the construction field went through a series of emissions, starting with Tier 1 to Tier 2, and now we're at Tier 4 final. This is a Tier 3 John Deere 6068. Pretty much, you want to refer to the owner's manual on the oil change intervals and stuff like that. I would still recommend 1,000 hours or less on the air cleaner. The importance on these higher tier engines, Tier 3 and Tier 4, is the fuel system. So you'll notice here that on the fuel filter, it has a sensor. So this engine actually comes equipped with a pre-fuel filter and then another fuel filter. Normally the pre-fuel filter, I have the sensor on it. The slightest bit of any contaminants, water, and it won't even be visible to you. We'll send a code through the ECM and shut this engine down. I would recommend every couple weeks changing these fuel filters. A lot of times you can cross these filters to a Baldwin or a Wix or a Napa. Sometimes you can't, you got to go straight through John Deere. A lot of manufacturers like John Deere, they're even putting the John Deere number on them for you, but very important. I mean, it's all fuel related. If you want to come around here, so one of the ways they've increased the efficiency on emissions and everything is most of them have high pressure fuel pumps now with a high pressure fuel rail, so you could reach, depending on the engine, sometimes as much as 30,000 psi on an injection line. In the old days, if you run a unit out of fuel, you could crack the injectors and bleed the system through. A lot of these injection lines, some of them are glass line now, and they recommend never breaking a line, because if you break it free and put it back on, one, it may never seal up, or you break the inner coating on these lines, or two, if you try to break it like in start mode and you got your hand up there, 30,000 psi, it's going to inject the fuel right into your skin. So it's not something to be messed with. John Deere's pretty cool with their units here. You know, they have the owner's manual right in there for the engine, and that'll pretty much tell you the service intervals and everything, and the maintenance on this, probably tell you how to relash the valves and everything about that. It does come with that ECM that I said. That's about it. You really fuel sensitive, these new tier engines. So tier 3, tier 4. If this was a tier 4, you would have DEF that you'd have to put in it also. You want to keep your fuel tanks clean at all time. Probably most important of all is, if you were going to set this up, I'd recommend draining the tank, kind of like you would do an old automobile or whatever, because if it sets up too long with fuel in it, one thing that can happen is algae will grow in that tank, and that's a nightmare for any engine, but with these newer engines, it would be a big nightmare.